In this video, we are going to discuss the game that made Nodirbek Abdusattorov the champion of Prague International Chess Festival 2024. We have the round number 8 on our board. Abdusattorov is facing Parham Maghsoodloo from Iran. The game is full of excitement and thrill and you're simply going to love it. So let's quickly jump into the video. So Nodirbek with the white pieces starts the game with 1 e4. Parham replies with c5, knight f3, g6, and we have the Sicilian defense. Knight c3, and we have the a6, the knight of variation. After a6, Abdusattorov continues with h3, which is a very common way to continue in this very position. After h3, we have e5, attacking the knight, knight to b3, and here we have the move bishop to e7. Bishop e3, bishop to e6, not yet castling in this position. And here we have queen to f3 by Nodirbek. His idea is pretty clear. He wants to do a long castle and he wants to expand on the king's side via g4. So after queen f3, we have the move knight to d7 by Parham. And here already we have the move g4. So what's happening in this position? So after g4, white is trying to play on the light squares, whereas black is going to try to play on the dark squares because white's dark square is extremely weak. So after g4, black plays h6. First, chopping white's g5, long castle, rook to c8, putting the rook on an open c5, knight to d5 in the position, centralizing the knight. And after knight d5, if you try to capture the knight, for example with bishop d5, after e d5, the point here is black's light squares are extremely weak. So white can already get a very comfortable position after bishop to d3. So that's the reason, at the place of capturing the knight, Parham played the move knight to f8, again trying to maneuvering the pieces, trying to put the knight to g6, trying to control the dark squares. After knight f8, we have bishop to d3, developing the pieces, knight to g6, and here we have the move rook to e1. And after rook e1, we can already say that white has successfully developed all his pieces. And after king to b1, white needs to find an idea to continue the position. After rook e1, we have knight to d7, and we have finally the move king to b1. And after knight d7, the idea is pretty clear. Black wants to play maybe on the queen side. We have first bishop to g5, an interesting idea. First, black wants to trade off one dark square bishop. So here Abdusattorov is like, okay, I'm going to play my pawn to c4 and I'm giving you the choice if you want to try to capture my bishop on e3. Parham is like, okay, no thanks, fine, I'm going to simply short castle. We have bishop to f1 in the position, and here we have the move knight to h4 attacking the queen. Bishop into g5 attacking the queen. So first we have h5, and now we have the move queen to d3. Centralizing the queen, and yeah, everything is optimally placed. Knight to g6 because knight on h4 was not doing anything. So knight to g6, knight to e3, and here we have the move rook to c6. So black's idea is pretty clear. Black wants to play via maybe queen c7, rook c8, b5, and stuff like that. Queen d2 first, b6, knight to d5, centralizing the knight in the position, and here we have the move a5. Black is slowly and steadily trying to push the pawns on the queen side. a4. So white is like, okay, I'm going to try to stop all your pawn pushes on the queen side. We have the move knight to f4 in the position, attacking the knight and putting some pressure on the pawn on h3, though it is already well protected by the bishop. We have rook to e3, putting the rook on the third rank, which is actually a very good square for the rook. We have the move g6. The idea could be to play the move king g7 followed by rook h8, knight to c3, and here we have the move knight to f6. If black tries to capture the pawn on c4 in the position, already after bishop trade, white can happily capture the pawn on d6, and now knight is hanging on d7. You cannot move the knight because the queen would be hanging. So rook c7 is a forced move, and here black is already extremely passive after knight b5. So that is the reason bishop into c4 is a bad option for black. So black continued the game with knight to f6. We have f3, defending the pawn on g4 as well as on e4. We have king h7, knight to d5, and here we have the move king to g7. The idea could be to play the move rook h8 in the position. First, here we have the move h4 by Nodirbek Abdusattorov, a very interesting move. What is the idea? After h4, the idea here is, if black captures the pawn on h4, Nodirbek is first going to chop off the knight, pawn takes, and here we have the move rook to e1. And here after something like g5 maybe, if you try to capture the pawn in this position, white can first play the move knight d4 attacking the rook, and after the rook moves somewhere here, we can simply trade off the bishop, and already capturing the pawn on f4. The pawn on d6 is weak, knight b5 is coming in, maybe even g5, and white is comfortable, it's an equalish position, but I think practically speaking, white must be having the edge. So going back, if black plays g5 trying to defend both the pawns in the position, which makes sense, here white is going to play the move knight d4, attacking the rook and the bishop. And after rook c5, we can simply chop off the bishop, and after pawn takes queen d6. And white is happy in this position after queen d6, rook d6. What's happening? White is having 6 pawns, black is having also 6 pawns, and it should be an even position. But okay, black continued the game with bishop into d5. First, chopping off the knight, c d5, and after rook c8. We have the move h into g5, capturing the pawn, attacking the knight. And after g into h5, Parham made the first mistake of the game, which is to play the move knight to h7, going for capturing the pawn on g5. At this position, a much better move could have been to play the move knight d7, trying to play on the queen side. But knight to h7, which allows white to play the move bishop a6, a very strong move. Rook c7, rook c1, trading off the rook, knight takes pawn, and here we have the move queen c6, which I personally didn't like so much. A much better track could have been to play the move rook c3, and now jumping in with the rooks and the queen to c6, and white is already having the edge. But we have queen c6, which looks a bit tempting option for white, putting pressure on the pawn on d6 as well as on b6, and forcing the queen to remain on the square of d8. We have knight g2 attacking the rook, rook c3, knight to e1, knight d2 because the pawn on f3 was hanging. So rook h8 finally, black's idea is to get in with the rook to h2 or maybe h1. We have rook e3 attacking the knight, rook h2 attacking the knight. So white played the move knight to f1. And here what I liked about Parham was he has this resourcefulness. So he played the move knight to c2 attacking the rook first. And now he played the move knight to b4. He knew that his rook was hanging, so first he found some counter-attacking strategies, attacking the queen. And here it looks like after knight to b4, white is going to move the queen maybe let's say to b5. And here black is already better after rook h3 attacking the pawn. And the point is after knight d2 defending the pawn, white can already play rook h1 check. And as the a2 and c2 squares are covered up, white is forced to play rook c1. Black can trade off the rook and play the move queen c7 check, and the game is completely winning for black. The reason is quite simple. If queen c4, trying to trade off the queens, black can play knight into a6. You cannot capture the knight because the queen is pinned. And after queen takes, black is already defending the queen. So black is already a piece up. And if you try to play the move knight c4, now this time f3 is hanging up and the white's position is completely falling apart. So that's the whole point. And if you try to move the king, now queen c2 is completely winning the game. So Abdusattorov find an amazing and brilliant move in the position, which is to play the move knight into h2, capturing the rook in this position, sacrificing the queen, and here we have d into c6. So what's happening in the position? After d into c6, definitely black can stop this position via knight queen c7 or knight d6, stopping the pawn to go on c7. But the point here is you cannot really capture the pawn on c6. So slowly and steadily, white is going to play bishop b5, put the knight to g5, put the knight on d5, trying to capture the pawn on b6, and slowly and steadily, white is going to try to push the pawn to c7, and white is the one having a good position. Knight e6, bishop c4 attacking the knight, knight to c7, knight to f4, knight to f1, queen to e8 attacking the pawn, bishop d5, pawn push. Obviously, you would not like to capture this position because here white is completely winning after just white needs to put the knight over here. So maybe to knight e3, knight c4, knight a3, knight b5, and just keep on pushing the pawn, and white is completely winning the position. So you must keep the knight on c7. So we have b5 in the position for black trying to open up the position. And here Abdusattorov made a blunder in the position by playing the move knight to e3. A better move could have been to simply capture the pawn. Knight takes, followed by rook b3 attacking the knight. Knight c7 and now knight e3. And you can already sense white can really penetrate with the rook via b7. But we have knight e3, and the reason black pushed the pawn in this position because white's idea is already to play the move rook b3 and putting pressure on the b6 pawn. That's the reason black must push the pawn, and we have knight e3 takes. And the point here is black is better because after rook c2, here black is already having a better position after queen h8, which is a very strong move. And the point here is, after queen h8, for example, if white continues the game via bishop c4, the idea is to play the move knight d5. We have queen h1 check, capturing the pawn, and after knight d4, knight to d5, black can even capture the pawn on e4. What's the whole point? The rook is hanging, and if you try to move the rook, I can simply capture the knight, and here on the time, it's a check, and once the queen move, we can already play maybe here, and after c7, you can simply block it. The position is completely winning for black because black is just having too many pawns. So that's the reason queen h8 was completely winning, and Parham was having 30 minutes on his clock. But he played the move queen b8, which was a bad move. Bishop c4, and here we have the move a3. Knight to d5, knight to e6, b3, and the position is completely winning. You can try to pause the video and try to find the best move for black in this position. Okay, so the best move for black is to play the move queen a7. The idea is pretty clear. Black is going to play the move queen g1, followed by knight to d4. And once the rook moves, black can play the move queen c1, and black is completely winning the position. But knight to d4 was played in the game by Parham, which was a bad move, attacking the rook, but because here we have c7, and after queen to h8, white was having the only move to defend the position, which was to play the move rook to d2. And the whole point was, if you try to play something else like rook f2 for example, we already have queen h4 attacking the rook, rook move, queen h2, and it's already a mate. So it's all, you can already sense rook d2 is the only move. And the point is, if knight into f3, you can already play rook f2, and white is going to have some good crazy chances of sacrificing the rook on f2, f7, and trying to promote it to a queen. After king a2, white is already having a better position. That's the reason queen h1 was played in the game, king a2, and here we have the move queen to c1, which looks pretty natural. You are attacking the rook. Your idea is to play the move knight c2 followed by queen a1. So here we have rook h2, a4, trying to push the pawn, g5. And g5 was simply an awesome move. The idea is pretty clear. If you try to continue the game, for example, after a into b3, bishop b3, knight b3, white is already winning after knight f6. What's the whole point? The whole point is to give a, for example, if knight c5, for example, check, check, and it's the mate. So it's a very common pattern in chess. So d5 is the fourth move, where after rook h7 check, white makes a knight, and it's such a interesting position. Everything is covered up. King e6 is a mate, so you must sacrifice the queen, and it's completely winning for white. So going back, that's the reason a into b3 is a bad move. So first knight into f3 was played in the game, trying to, the idea is to capture the g5 pawn first. Rook f2, giving a check, and now playing the move knight d2. The idea is to play queen b1 followed by queen to b3, checkmate. So white simply sacrificed the rook in this position. And now in this position, after king into a3, black is having a queen just for 2 pieces. It should be winning for black, right? But it is winning for, it's actually equal position, because you cannot capture the c7 pawn because it's well defended by the knight, and you cannot capture the knight because it's well defended by the bishop and the pawn. So here after king a3, it's an even position if black could have continued the game with queen to c1 check. And after king a2, maybe queen to c6, trying to cover all the light squares, not allowing white to play bishop a4, bishop d7, trying to promote it to a queen, and it's a draw. But queen to a5 check was played, which allowed white to play the move bishop a4, and it's winning position now. After queen h6, we have king b4, bishop blocks in between, and now bishop d7 is simply coming in. You can't stop it. Now queen is getting made up. So we have a couple of checks given by Parham. We finally have queen check, takes, and here queen to g8 check. Interesting and an awesome move. The whole point was if takes, check. The queen is getting dead, and it's completely winning for white. So that's the reason after queen to g8 check, Parham decided to resign the game, and we have the champion of the Prague International Chess Festival 2024, Nodirbek Abdusattorov. One round is still remaining, but he still won the tournament. So the game was completely filled with thrill and excitement, and I hope that you guys have simply loved this game. If you did, then make sure to like the video, share this video with everyone, and make sure to subscribe to our channel if you are new to our channel. I'm going to come up with these exciting games like this. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching Oneshot Chess.